the phenomenon of this deep, deep symbolic analysis of The Shining was kind of a recent one. That besides Bill Blakemore and Jeffrey Cox, who started a few years before, the bulk of what we've been finding has only been done in the last couple of years. So that the phenomenon of this sort of extreme Shining analysis is kind of a recent one. So we as much wanted to sort of talk about that phenomenon and the new way people are looking at films, as well as, the substance of what people were saying about The Shining. But once it is a terrifying, sometimes funny, instantly watchable horror movie, and it's one starring major movie stars, but it's also kind of a severe art movie that makes some very unusual choices. So if you start to watch it just because it'll be fun to watch The Shining, there's enough slow moments and there's enough air in it and there's enough odd choices to keep you thinking about it. Well, also, there's some very, very basic questions in The Shining that never get answered, and most movies today answer all of your questions. I mean, The Shining is a puzzle that's missing a few pieces. You never find out what happened to, even on a basic plot level, you never find out what happened to Danny in room 237. Oh, well, you never explicitly find out, though there are lots of people who have very strong ideas about what happened to him. And you never, in that black and white photo at the end, is presented as if, aha, here's the answer to the riddle that we've been watching. But it doesn't work anything like that. It's a whole new riddle. So The Shining, unlike a lot of films, leaves you with more questions than answers.
I also think it's just one of those films that it's about a place and a mood and so forth, and I think it's one of those films that you can just, if it's on, you can pick it up anywhere and watch it. I don't know how many people I've talked to who said if they're flipping around and they see The Shining, they have to watch the whole film. And I think there's something about it that really is like glue that catches you and keeps you in that hotel, wandering around, looking for the answers and for the ways out. And one of the people we talked to, Julie Kern, talks about the impossible geography of the Overlook, and how things can't exist in there, and how hallways lead to impossible places. And I think that's part of its power as well.
Very much by design. When we started this project, I had tried, and I had a documentary that I abandoned years ago because the subject matter was too broad, and I was kind of paralyzed by the amount of choices I could have explored. So when me and Tim were kicking the idea for this thing around, we probably spent 8 months or a year sort of developing it and researching it and saying, what's the scope of this going to be and what do we want to cover? We decided to focus in on exclusively, what happens to a film after it leaves the hands of the filmmakers, and only the audience has only their own tool set to put the pieces back together again, if that's not like some horrible mixed metaphor. But yeah, exclusively we wanted to focus on the audience and how they figure out a movie after it's left the hands of the filmmaker. So by design, we didn't want to do a making of, and we didn't want to talk to an art director or, Diane Johnson, the co-screenwriter or producer or anyone like that. So let's just be hyper-focused, on this one thing, and then go really, really deep down that hole.
Each of the people we interviewed was intelligent, compelling, engaged, and I like people like that. And I found each of their voices would just grab me, and I would be drawn into their theory. And always there would be some kind of eureka moment where I was like, oh my God, they're right. And then we'd move on to the next one. And then the impossibility of these things adding up, or is it impossible? Can we put it all together? That's what sort of drove the picture for me as we were researching it, as Rodney was cutting it. I think it all comes down to the people we interviewed ultimately.
I've only heard one thing, sort of confirmed or denied by, people who worked on the film. There was an interview with the producer of The Shining who actually confirmed that the floor plan and the layout of the interior of the hotel was different from the outside, in that it wouldn't fit, and that it was bigger on the inside than on the outside. Bigger on the inside than on the outside, and that was a strategy to make things seem kind of strange and uncanny, appropriate for a bizarre haunted hotel. The closest I've heard to anyone from the film commenting on the Native American themes in the movie was, like Bill Blakemore, who talks about them, said that through a friend of a friend of a friend, he asked Kubrick whether that was his intention with all that imagery in the film, and he didn't get any sort of categorical answer, which is consistent with interviews and things that I've read with him when he said things like, the Mona Lisa wouldn't be improved, if there was a little plaque on the bottom that said she's smiling that way because she's thinking about how cute, her boyfriend might have been as a little kid. That, Kubrick, and there's another quote that he had, which was really great, which was, people resent it if you tell them anything straight out, but their minds are attracted to puzzles and allegories. So it seems like even if he were still around, he wouldn't have been the kind of guy to have wanted to say, yes, that Indian thing is right, no, this thing is wrong, yes, no, and, C plus with C plus with comments at the end of it.